Welcome to the 30/30 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Dr. Ruiz.
Hello everyone, super excited about my interview today. My guest today is William Shewfelt. William is an actor and ketogenic fitness expert who is best known for starring on Netflix and Nickelodeon's Power Rangers Ninja Steel as Brody, the Red Power Ranger. William specializes in fat loss and building muscle using a ketogenic diet. William has been training and experimenting with dieting since the age of 12, ranging from flexible dieting, intermittent fasting, and over 4 years as a strict vegan. After years of skin issues, gut problems, and never achieving a lean, muscular physique, William finally stumbled upon the ketogenic diet, and after trying a carnivorous ketogenic diet, was able to achieve a ripped physique. I am going to be presenting at the Spark Conference in Toronto, Canada this week. I am going to be talking about botanicals and their use as cancer therapies. So if you see me at the conference, please stop by and say hello. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hello everyone, super excited to have one of my dear friends, William Shewfelt, who is an actor, the Red Power Ranger, and a keto fitness expert. Hey William, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. You're an awesome dude, so I'm really excited for today.
Before we get started, okay, when did your love for the color red start?
It started just about the day I was cast. The truth is, I'm not really a huge fan of the color red, which I think I'm just about to get fired from Hasbro for saying that. But so I've always loved the color blue. I always thought the blue Power Ranger was awesome.
Dude, Billy the Blue Power Ranger? No, man. He was a nerd. No. It was all about...
Not necessarily Billy. Although I love him. David Yost, the actor for him, he's a fantastic dude. I love the color blue in general. So all of my auditions, I would wear a blue shirt. And the whole time I kept thinking, oh, maybe I'll be the blue Power Ranger. So I kept wearing a blue shirt, and then they ended up casting me as the red one. And when I realized, he's the leader of the team, I didn't complain.
Well, yeah. But, in true 30/30 fashion, what is your hero story? How did you end up talking to me? Because, this is not a show about, this is not TMZ. This is not about, talking smack on the blue Power Ranger. This is a health show. So how did you end up talking to me?
So health has been a passion of mine for a long time. Since I was 12, I got really invested into health and fitness. It started mostly with Jack LaLanne, who is far past my time, but got really into Jack LaLanne and his health content and just his inspirational view towards life. And naturally, like many 12, 13-year-old boys who are hitting puberty, you suddenly realize that girls don't like you if you're sitting in front of a video game all day. You actually have to put some size on, you got to look the part. So I started getting really into weight training, and I wanted to change my body and my physique. I was a very skinny kid, extremely skinny. And I was the guy that was buying every protein powder, every vitamin, anything they sold at GNC, I was getting my hand on. It was funny. I must have wasted thousands of my parents' dollars. So I would do this, never got any results at all. I go to college, and I ended up starting to eat a really garbage diet, just like a lot of college students. I had tons of skin issues. I started to have a lot of gut issues, and I had really bad performance in the gym. I was never getting in the kind of shape I wanted to. So what I did was I go on a vegan diet. The vegan diet made everything worse. So a lot of people think, well, maybe you didn't do it right. So I spent 4+ years of doing a whole foods, plant-based vegan diet. I tried many iterations of this, and I gave it my full effort. And ultimately, things came crashing down during my first season on Power Rangers. I was still doing that vegan diet, and I just did not have the energy to perform on set. Whether it's stunts, whether it's waking up, we would have 6 a.m. call times. I could not do it. So I realized, okay, I got to make a change. I've been doing this for 4 years. It's not working. You got to know when to cut your losses. So I started to research, and I actually started to learn about the ketogenic approach. That was about 2.5 years ago. So I started the ketogenic diet, and boom, it was like overnight. My mental clarity improved, my health improved, my energy started to go up. I could fast longer. I didn't have to be eating all the time. And then about a year and a half ago, I started a more carnivorous ketogenic diet where it was higher protein and I eased up on the fat a little bit, and I was still keeping my carbs pretty low. Lots of nutrient dense foods, liver, grass-fed beef, and wild-caught, salmon and fish. And all of a sudden, I started putting even more muscle on, and I dropped body fat pretty low. So now I walk around at about 5 to 6% body fat year round, and that's not calorie counting. It's not killing myself in the gym. It's completely based on following this carnivorous ketogenic diet. So it changed my life, and I'm hoping that it can change a few more lives.
Dude, so much to unpack, because like as a doctor, I do see a lot of people are coming in that want to lose weight, but a more frustrating patient is those patients that want to gain weight, and it's usually the lanky, skinny dude that has tried everything, and it's frustrating because you go through life and people are like, oh, you're so skinny, and you feel uncomfortable with yourself. Now I never had the problem. I was a fat kid. But it's as frustrating that you can eat and eat and eat and not gain any weight. And people don't see it as a problem, or people don't have any empathy towards that. But you are that patient. So how did you go from like skinny to, did you ever had that skinny fat where you just like packing calories? Have you ever heard of GOMAD?
I did go mad.
Yeah. Did you do GOMAD? So what's GOMAD for people that don't know what GOMAD is?
GOMAD is the best way to get severe acne in a short amount of time. So GOMAD is supposed to be this, it's sort of a dirty bulking protocol, and it comes from a lot of the old school, squatting and powerlifting philosophy, but you drink, it stands for a gallon of milk a day. So in an attempt to put on weight, hopefully muscle, you're drinking a gallon of milk a day. And I'm going to tell you, it put on a lot of fat on me. It might have put on some muscle, and it put on even more acne. So for me, ultimately, it was a completely strategy. I used to do strong lifts and Smolov and Wendler 531 and all kinds of powerlifting programs. And I can't say I would recommend GOMAD.
Yeah. I first heard about GOMAD from Mark Ripito. And that's what I see, anyone that attempts to do GOMAD, and you can go online and do, GOMAD before and after. You do put on weight, but it's dirty weight. Did you ever try anything like Martin Berkham's, intermittent fasting stuff?
I'm super familiar with Martin Berkhan and Lean Gains and 16-8, but I never specifically followed his protocol. I don't know if you're familiar with Greg O'Gallagher and Keno Body.
I'm not.
Okay, so Greg O'Gallagher is he's a young dude, maybe mid-20s, and he created an approach called Keno Body, which is kind of based off of his approach from Ori Hofmeckler and Warrior Diet and Martin Berkhan and a couple different sources and some primal stuff. And I tried that, and it's ultimately a sort of flexible dieting, intermittent fasting, if it fits your macros. And it did not work for me because the thing is, you are ultimately counting the calories, trying to hit a sustainable calorie deficit, and you are, restricting, but at the same time, you're eating a pretty good amount of carbohydrates and fat. So you never develop that really advanced fat burning machinery and the mitochondrial capacity to burn higher amounts of fat through ketogenic diets and through intermittent fasting and high intensity exercise. So it's painful to burn fat using that sort of strategy. So I tried it. It didn't work for me, not nearly as well as what I'm doing now.
I tell my patients, that want to lose weight, completely different set of people, different set of problems. I tell them that, I wish it was just, you can just eat a natural product, food quality, that's all that matters. Well, no, if you eat enough calories of good food, you will put on weight. And then you talk, you can talk about, it's macros. That's the only thing that matters. And no, because if you eat enough macros, if you're eating ketogenic and you just pouring down the MCT oil on your coffee, and you can get not only can you gain weight, because I can make a black coffee 1,000 calories pretty fast if you put enough crap on it. And then that can hurt your liver because your liver is taking all that, processing of fats and things like that. But calories in, calories out, it doesn't work either, So it's everything. Is that your experience with trying to gain weight? That it's not just food quality and macronutrient, but also calories in, calories out?
Man, you touched on so many things, I believe. This is going to go well because we're starting from very similar points right here. So I think if somebody says that calories are all that matter, I think that they have very little credibility. But if they say that calories don't matter at all, they also don't have credibility. So I put on fat on a ketogenic diet when I first started it. And I also, could lose weight on a calories in, calories out approach. But then you get that crazy insatiable hunger and you eventually rebound. And it takes extreme willpower to force yourself down in fat when you're using that approach and you're not paying attention to nutrient density, food quality, and what you're eating. So ultimately, you have to take the best of both worlds. You want the most nutrient dense calories, but if you're trying to lose weight, you are going to need to be in sort of a caloric deficit. And I think the best way to do that is if your food choices lead to lower ad libitum caloric intake. That's the perfect way to do it. If you're naturally less hungry based on what you're eating.
Now, for my listeners, what's ad libitum?
Ad libitum would be without necessarily controlling for calories. So based on what you're naturally eating. So you give somebody a plate of donuts and you give them a plate of, let's say, steak and eggs, and you eat 500 calories of steak and eggs. You're not going to be eating as many. You won't be able to eat as much as if you have those donuts there. You can down about 1,000 calories of the donuts. So you want a diet that leads to spontaneously eating less calories just based on satiety mechanisms and your hormones and your leptin and your ghrelin are just doing better in general.
I'm pretty sure you've read Wired to Eat.
I actually haven't read.
Dude, no. Okay, interview over. Go to Amazon, get that damn book. Because that's, like the crux of that book is that, like how can we use food technology, because that's what got us into this problem, For example, okay, like if you go to a movie theater and you get a bucket of popcorn, that's around, I think, 1,800 calories. Don't Google that because I'm not 100% sure. One of those big buckets, Imagine eating 1,800 calories worth of steak. You wouldn't be able to just the steak in one sitting. But people go to the movie theater, get a big bucket of popcorn, and then get a refill because of the palatability and how non-satiating puffing corn kernels is. Now, if you put a skinny kid on a nutritionally dense diet, on an unprocessed diet, it's so hard to eat natural products, like broccoli and steak. And, how did you overcome that? How did you overcome, being able to just stuff as much volume of food so you can be on a calorie excess, not a deficit?
So ultimately, we have to determine what sort of weight are we trying to gain. And I think ultimately every young man that wants to gain weight, unless they're on the front line of the football field, they really want to gain muscle. They don't want to gain fat. So you have to look at how do you actually put muscle on without causing yourself to gain a ton of fat. And naturally, you're going to gain some fat if you're attempting to gain a lot of muscle in as short a time as possible. But it ultimately has to do, are you eating a sufficient amount of protein, calories? Are the foods nutritionally dense enough? And are you providing training stimulus that will cause you, to go through that muscle protein synthesis and actually put the muscle on? Now, there are a couple important factors there. Number one, I would say the training stimulus. It seems that you could do just about any diet. And if you're training correctly, you can put some muscle on. You see these flexible dieting guys that are eating Oreos and they're eating a bunch of cereal and they're drinking protein shakes, but still create a pretty impressive physique. Yeah, who knows what their internal health is like, but they'll still create an impressive physique based on the fact that they have sufficient protein, calories, and the training is right. So I always recommend you want to be doing mostly compound lifts with your training. So in terms of compound lifts, we're talking about a lot of the traditional powerlifting movements. So barbell rows and squats and bench press, deadlifts, overhead press. And those are the best bang for your buck, these multi-joint movements that are really going to create also the hormonal cascade that's going to help you put on more muscle. So that's number one. The other thing is you can't be burning a ton of calories exercising. So really economize on what you're doing in the gym. You don't need to be on the treadmill for an hour if you're trying to put on a bunch of muscle. Those calories might be better used for recovery or for putting muscle mass on. So the training, super important, and you want to be doing the right amount of it and the right weight. Beyond the training, I think what's so critical, and it's almost starting to get played down now by a lot of the plant-based community, is you do want to have a lot of, personally, I believe, animal protein. I think animal protein and the anabolic effect you get from that, yes, it spikes insulin, which is an anabolic hormone. Consuming the animal protein, it just packs muscle on you. When I started going really heavy on red meat and eggs, and I also do fish, all of a sudden muscle was finally getting packed on me. So I keep this is where I differ a little bit from the ketogenic community. I keep the protein higher for young guys that are trying to put on. Keep the protein higher, keep the fat pretty high, but you don't need to go crazy with it, just moderately high, and then keep the carbs low. And if the guys are really young, if we're talking about 15, 16, 17, I would say, honestly, eat whole food carbs. But I don't really recommend grains a whole lot. I would say go ahead, eat your sweet potatoes, eat some fruits. It's really tough to pack on fat when you're young and insulin sensitive like that, especially if you're a hard eater.
You mentioned sweet potatoes and potatoes. Do you time them? Do you have specific timing for carbohydrates? If you follow things like Lean Gains or programs like that, you would usually have carbs immediately after working out because of that insulin sensitivity. Do you yourself time carbohydrate?
Personally, I don't time carbohydrates because I don't eat carbohydrates.
We got to get into that in a second. Yeah.
So what I recommend for young guys that are, want to eat carbohydrates to really maximize the anabolic effect is, yes, you want to eat it around the times when you're most insulin sensitive and it'll do the best things for you. So that's always either immediately before, during, or after exercise. So I think the easiest way is honestly just after exercise, your post-workout meal. You're going to have a good amount of protein there, some fat, and that would be the best time to put your carbs. If you're going to do a really weight-intensive workout and it's intense, go ahead and eat them right before the workout, and then you'll be able to shuttle a lot of those into your muscle glycogen, and you'll be able to use those for performance reasons. I don't recommend, if you're not working out that day and you decide, I'm going to have a ton of sweet potatoes for breakfast, well, good job on shutting off a lot of your fat burning machinery for the day and filling up your liver glycogen. There's really no point in doing that. I think place it around your workouts.
You talked about doing the compound movement, making sure you're doing the deadlift and the squat and all of those amazing very high return on investment barbell exercises. But what about let's say you have a skinny kid, 15-year-old that doesn't know how to do them, because maybe they weren't part of the athletic team at high school. Where can you learn how to do these movements? Because they can be intimidating.
Absolutely. So where I learned to do these movements was I liked a program called Strong Lifts 5x5. It's a very basic introductory powerlifting based program. Fantastic guy on the website. I think that's an excellent place to start. But young kids are so resourceful. I think you just YouTube these movements and find out, okay, so how exactly do you do a squat? Make sure that you're practicing this in the gym with minimal weight on the bar. And ultimately, you do want to follow a progression model where you don't immediately start with your 5-rep max. You got to start light and slowly build up. And you learn the form. And then eventually, all the connective tissue, all the sort of the way you connect neurally to the exercises. You want to make sure that everything is functioning correctly. So you start light and you slowly build your way up. If you're, 14, 15, 16, like I was when I was really getting into weightlifting, you got time. Don't be, don't be in a hurry. You'll get there. So definitely learn the movements first and don't do it yourself.
Do you use the Strong Lift app?
I don't use that. I don't really follow Strong Lifts anymore. But back in the day, it was very simple for me. I would go in, I'd do my 5x5 of squats, 3 minutes rest in between sets. And then I'd go over and I'd do I think it would be bench. And then on top of bench, I might do rows. I forget exactly how the workouts work, but they're extremely effective for getting you strong when you're young. And that actually leads in another quick point that I want to, which is when you're young and you want to put muscle on, at my age right now, I know I'm trying to make myself sound like I'm old, but I'm 23. But at this point, I've built up a strength base where I can actually do higher volume work and fill my muscles out. I believe that's more sarcoplasmic hypertrophy. I can fill my muscles out based on the strength I currently have. If you're a young guy and you've never squatted, 4 plates, 2 on each side, or if you can't bench 135 yet, you need to work your way up to those lifting targets, and that'll give you a very solid strength base. And then on top of that, then you can start doing a lot of the isolation movements and pumping up and the higher volume things.
Yeah, super interesting because you were right. People are resourceful. When I started doing, I basically did starting strength, which is a version of the 5x5, and I learned those compound exercises through a book, looking at pictures on a book. And now there's a 5x5 Strong Lifts app that is fantastic. It has a timer. It gives you your A workout and your B workout. It tracks it for you. It's pretty cool. And every once in a while, I'll go back and I'll do a couple of months of 5x5 because I think it's just such an easy, you don't have to think about what to do. You just walk into the gym. You're out in 30 minutes. But there are forums, that are pretty friendly where people can, you can record yourself doing your squat and people can criticize you. I know Reddit has a 5x5 strong lift subreddit that is pretty fantastic, and people are genuinely trying to help you. So if you don't know how to do this compound exercises, don't be a dummy. Pull up, YouTube, look at how people are, doing their squats and the deadlifts. Be careful with the bench. Make sure you have a spotter, but it's not that difficult. It takes a couple of weeks maybe in order for you to kind of get a feel of it before you can advance. But if you can get the squat, the deadlift, the bench, row, and maybe a power clean under your belt, and the power clean has a little bit more of a learning curve. But if you can get those lifts, you don't need to be curling. You don't need to be working with cable machines and stuff like that.
I completely agree. It's when you're young and you want to start putting muscle on, the first thing you do is you look at your favorite fitness idol or bodybuilder. You see them and they're hitting their cable crossovers and they're pumping their biceps up with concentration curls. And if you're like me, I was watching Pumping Iron and all those guys were jacked. And you think, okay, so that's what I have to do. But you can't eat like a bodybuilder and train like a bodybuilder if you're 15 years old and you can't squat 225 yet. You have to build that strength base. And then also take into account that a lot of these guys are on performance enhancing steroids and put muscle on, regardless of what sort of exercise program they're using. And they're also genetic freaks, a lot of them. So it's really critical when you don't go and start doing a ton of leg curls and reverse tricep extensions and the most complicated exercises you can find. These compound lifts are hitting your entire body in probably the best ways possible, in ways that definitely work with your body's natural movements. And they're definitely going to pack on the strength that supports you in the long run.
Although you can make an argument that a 15 to 20-year-old kid probably, comparable testosterone levels to a 40-year-old dude injecting testosterone. So you take advantage of that testosterone. Now, how long do you train for? It sounds super complicated, so you spend a couple of hours in the gym?
Yeah, 5 minimum. No, actually, that's funny because when I started training, I used to be in the gym for 4 or 5 hours when I was 13 years old. But what I do currently, it's actually kind of similar to a Mark Sisson type approach where I really like to spend a lot of time doing more zone 2 cardio, which is gentler than a lot of the higher intensity interval type workouts. So it's very lipolytic. It's low intensity enough that it's aerobic and you're using a lot more fat burning percentage wise, not in terms of total fat burning, but as a ratio of the substrate you're burning a lot more fat than carbs or glycogen. So I like to do a lot of Zone 2 cardio. So usually I'll do 30 to 60 minutes a day. And that's just something I enjoy doing daily. I think it gives me that extra little bit of leanness. Like a lot of guys have that stubborn body fat, the bottom abs and the lower back and certain areas like that. I find for me that 30, 60 minutes a day of Zone 2 cardio just gets rid of that. So I do that. And then on top of that, what I do is 3 times a week lifting. I like to do sort of reverse pyramid training. So that's, I'm sure you're familiar with this, but it's sort of starting out with after a couple warm-up sets, you start out with your heaviest set. You'll hit that for maybe 4 to 6 reps. Then your second set will be about 6 to 8 reps. And then you'll go for about 8 to 10 reps. So you really get to maximize your strength without burning yourself out. So I'll do reverse pyramid training with compound movements. And then on top of that, I'll have accessory lifts that will sort of pump up areas that I think are lagging. And really what you're doing is just kind of forcing some blood in there, forcing some, working the glycogen out, and hopefully building some more muscle in that area. So that's kind of what my workouts look like. I probably work out for an hour to an hour and a half daily. And that's just something I've been doing for so long at this point that it's just a habit.
Now, is it necessary for some? Let's say you want to be at around single digits body fat, but someone that that just wants to have maybe look good without their shirt on and maybe put in some muscle. Do they have to commit to an hour a day every day?
No, absolutely not. I think where a lot of that time comes from, a lot of the Zone 2 cardio, which to me is more like, it's like the cherry on top that just gets me to that extra, area that I want to be in, that I feel is good for commercial, film, modeling, TV work that I do, stuff like that. So that's why I do that. But I think ultimately, if you're just trying to look good on the beach, you'd like more or less visible, and you kind of want to have nice muscle tone. It really comes down to diet and then consistency and weight training. Those are probably the top 2 things you should be doing, because diet, everybody tells you this, but it accounts for probably, I don't want to put a percentage, but maybe 80 to 90% of your fat loss. You see marathoners that get fat. Everybody talks about that. So diet accounts for a lot of the fat loss. So take care of your diet first. And then on top of that, you do the weight training that help you build up the muscle. And now you've got a great frame there. Now, if you really want to lean down, then you can start to manipulate. All right, let me get my carbs really low. Let me do some more Zone 2 cardio. And those things will help you get into the lower single digit numbers.
Now, let's circle back around the vegan. How do you end up choosing veganism?
So here's kind of how it worked out. I was in college and I was, doing a lot of the dirty bulking, eating a lot of bad foods, trying to get more calories in to put muscle on. And it got my skin so bad. I turned to veganism because of how bad my acne and my health had gotten. I had no energy throughout the day. I could sleep as much as I wanted and I'd wake up exhausted. Had very little mental focus, which sucks in college when you're trying to study and you can't focus. And I just realized there's something wrong with my health. I'm always bloated. I have really bad skin, and my fitness isn't even going well anymore. So I thought, okay, so what's the healthiest thing you can do? I looked around a bit online and I thought, okay, well, it's got to be a whole foods plant-based diet. I found nutritionfacts.org. I found Healthy at 100. I found Forks Over Knives. I was reading everything I could get my hands on. Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Greger, all of those guys. So I really, really went far down this rabbit hole, and I spent 4 years doing that. So pretty much from my freshman year in college all the way through to that first season of Power Rangers, I was strictly following a whole foods plant-based diet. So this basically, I tried different iterations, more fruitarian and different things like that. But it basically was usually I would do whole grains, nuts, seeds, organic leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables, lots of legumes. And I would make sure that I had a good amount of protein in there, lots of fruits, things like that. So here's what happened. My skin got better, skin really cleared up. I was like, okay, that's great. Which I think in retrospect is from cutting out so many processed junk foods out of my diet. So skin cleared up. I lost a bit of weight, but I don't know if it was fat. I think I actually lost muscle because my body fat was just about the same. Gym performance, I got weak. That's how it is. So I got a bit weaker. Body composition wasn't great, but I had lost weight. but my skin finally cleared up, which to me was the most important thing. So you fast forward, and finally that first season of Power Rangers, I just couldn't handle it anymore. Insane hunger. I don't know if other people have experienced this, but I was never satiated on a vegan diet. I never once could walk away from a meal and say, I can't eat anymore. I could always eat more. So it really messed with my hunger and satiety signaling a lot.
What about your digestive health? Now that you don't eat grains, did it get better, or did you not have any problems? Because we always hear about people, oh, I went vegan and I got worse. You went vegan and got better, but we're not optimal, and that goes to, another thing that we discussed, it's like all of these diets work for someone, it's always trying to look for the best diet for you. And if, and if you're doing a vegan diet, sure, you might lose weight and your skin gets better, but you got to be very careful how you plan it, and you might, you will need some supplementation in the form of B12, and maybe having to drink pea protein or hemp protein all of the time in order to reach those protein levels. Maybe you're gonna need to supplement with DHEA and EPA. So when you go from a processed diet to a vegan diet, that's an improvement, but it's not optimal. Did you have any digestive issues with it, or was it perfectly fine?
Huge digestive issues. So not only the bloating and complete discomfort, but if you want to talk about gassiness, I don't even want to get listeners into what it was like, but let me just tell you, all day, every day. And then, a lot of vegans are quite proud of the fact that they're very regular and they, go to the restroom quite a few times a day. But trust me, on the Bristol scale, it's not a solid stool. It definitely isn't a solid stool with the amount of fiber I was eating. So you combine the gassiness, the loose stools, and the bloating and the complete discomfort. And my stomach I was lean enough, but my stomach was sticking out like a turtle. So it's just, it wasn't a good thing at all. So digestively, wasn't working for me. Now, in terms of the supplementation you mentioned, I'm completely on board with that. If you are doing a plant-based diet, you must be supplementing some form of omega-3, so your DHEA and EPA. You also want to make sure, or DHA, I should say, you also want to make sure you're getting in your B12, so you need to take some sort of supplemental B12. D3 can also be something that's problematic for a lot of vegans. So you do have to be covering your bases, and it's probably better to eat a variety of plant foods just so you could get a more complete spectrum of nutrients. But is it optimal? Absolutely not. It sure wasn't optimal for me.
So it was an improvement. Your skin got better, but it wasn't optimal. How the hell did you go from vegan to carnivorous?
Yeah, so that was sort of incremental. So I went from vegan to keto, basically. So we finished the first season of Power Rangers, and things are just getting really bad with my health. My appetite is out of control, and my energy is really bad. So we had, not 5 o'clock. So it would be 6 or 7 a.m. call times. We'd have to be on set, which means you get picked up at 6 a.m. And they take you in, and you have to go through makeup, wardrobe, all those things. Sometimes earlier you get picked up. So for me, I used to like to work out before I got to set. So I'd be getting up at 3:30, 4 o'clock sometimes. I'd work out first. And with the sleep deprivation and the fact that I had no energy throughout the day, things were just really starting to crash down on me. And I wasn't feeling good. I wasn't looking good. It wasn't working for me. So I get home, and we have a 3-week hiatus in between seasons. In 3 weeks, we got to fly back to New Zealand, shoot the second season. So I say, okay, I got to figure this out before I go back. Whatever it is that I'm going to have to do for my health, I got to change something. So for those 3 weeks, I started researching like a madman. Every article I could get my hands on, I'd look through books. I would go on YouTube videos. I'd look at sort of all the major influencers in the paleo, primal, ketogenic community. And I was studying these guys. And finally, I decided, okay, I'm going to try keto. And I didn't incrementally do it. It was overnight I went keto. So it was literally... So I went from one morning eating oatmeal and apples and beans and whatnot to the next day it was straight a bulletproof coffee, some bacon, and probably some ground beef or something like that. And here's the crazy thing. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, you must have gotten the worst keto flu and all this kind of stuff. I felt amazing after doing that. So you can probably imagine, after so long of depriving my body of certain B vitamins and so many things that you get from meat and animal-based nutrition, to suddenly be eating these foods and to actually have a higher salt diet, I felt great. And for the first time, I could say I was actually satiated after meals, which I had forgotten what that felt like. To me, it was like, a light went off in my brain. And then the biggest thing that, everybody experiences this, but it's the drop in water weight when you cut out the carbs from your diet. So all of a sudden, I lost 5 or 6 pounds in a matter of days. And I'm thinking, like, this must be the magic pill right here. Because I was combining intermittent fasting and the keto diet. So a lot of people also wondered, did you ever go through keto? I don't know if I did. I honestly felt better from the day I went vegan. It was as if my body was so deprived of these nutrients that when it finally got them, it just really took them in well. And on top of that, I was doing intermittent fasting and a lot of things like that even when I was vegan. So I had some experience with that.
Well, and you were pretty fit. So you were pretty insulin sensitive. So your experience is not going to be the same as someone that is not, insulin sensitive, because, just imagine, and this is for my listeners. Let's say you are not insulin sensitive, and your body is trying to limit the amount of insulin going into the cell because you're using so much sugar that when it's going through the mitochondria, that sugar is converting into reactive oxygen species, and those reactive oxygen species damage that cell, and then that cell dies really rapidly. So your body is trying to control that influx of fuel into the cell. And then all of a sudden, the next day you go keto. Now you're taking away the little sugar that is going into mitochondria, plus your body is still insulin insensitive. It's insulin resistant. So you're hitting the body from two different angles. So in the time that your body realizes, oh crap, I can use fat as a fuel source, you are going to feel a little bit, you're going to have that keto flu. But, what people don't realize is that if you cut your calories enough, even if you're fruitarian, you can go into ketosis. You can have ketones in your body, and you're training your body to utilize ketones as fuel source. So you don't have to be eating nothing but butter coffee and to create ketones. You can create ketones even on a fruitarian diet. So that's probably why you didn't experience it. And what we're trying to say here is that for William, that was a very specific situation. Feeling crappy after, fueling yourself with nothing but carbohydrates for a very long time, and then switching to a ketogenic diet is a real thing. But there are ways to prevent it. Like you mentioned, having salt. How do electrolytes play into all of this?
Electrolytes are something I think are extremely important, especially in that sort of keto induction phase where you're going through the first couple of weeks. And I completely identify with what you're saying. When you change fuel substrates in the body like that, it'll go through a period where it feels like there's scarcity. Where is my traditional fuel source? And naturally, you're dumping out a lot of water. So with that, excreting the salt is going to come a lot of other electrolytes as well. Your magnesium might be off. Your potassium might be off. That's why, it's often recommended in the first stages of going keto, salt and avocado, salt your foods a little bit extra, and always go for the higher quality salts, the pink salt and the Celtic sea salts and things like that. But you also need to be paying attention to your other, micronutrients and those electrolytes and minerals. So I think that that's extremely important early on. And as you go through it, I think your body becomes a bit more efficient with ketosis, with how it operates in the mitochondria. And you still have to be paying attention to, okay, let me keep my salt up. So for me, what I do still, I'm not like some people where I drink salt or anything like that. I'm not pouring back a ton of broth every day, but I just salt my foods to taste. I use a high quality salt. And then on top of that, sort of paying attention to other minerals. I take a magnesium supplement at night. So I usually take that before I go to sleep. It's the typical brand that a lot of people use. I think Calm.
Natural
is
Calm?
what it's called. Yes, exactly.
That's one of the few supplements that I use.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
And I'm on the right path. So I'll usually take that at night. And let's see, anything else for electrolytes? Occasionally, I do a mostly carnivorous diet, but occasionally I do like to include certain plant foods because I just feel, for one, they don't hinder any of my goals, and they may potentially add certain nutrient benefits. So I'll do sauerkraut, for example. I might have some organic blackberries. I might have some guacamole or some avocado. And I think that those foods are safe. They definitely don't hinder anything I'm trying to do. And there may also be, some added nutrient benefit and preventing potential deficiencies down the road. So I like to just kind of be smart about that stuff.
So obviously, going from a fruitarian or vegan approach to going keto or carnivorous, yeah, you haven't pooped in 4 years.
Oh, well, exactly.
How's your digestion now?
Oh my gosh. So many people wonder, okay, are you constipated all the time? Where's the fiber? Because most days I won't really eat any fibrous substances at all. It's fantastic. It's the best it's ever been. And I'm completely not overselling this thing. Like, my stomach, there's no bloating, there's no gassiness. I don't feel any digestive discomfort. And I'll go about once a day. And if we're looking at that stool thing, I'm the perfect number now, finally. So finally, my digestion has really evened itself out. I think a lot of people that tried Dr. Baker's 90-day carnivore challenge actually reported similar things in terms of how their digestion was and constipation. And, a lot of people talk about the fiber menace and, does it actually contribute more to constipation by adding so much of that bulk to your digestion? I don't know, but I know that for me, it's absolutely been better than when I was on the vegan diet. On the vegan diet, yes, I was pooping 3 times a day, but it wasn't comfortable and it sure didn't look good.
You heard it here first at the 30/30 Health Podcast. The Red Power Ranger power poops. And we lost all of our audience. That's it, dude. We lost all of the audience. Everyone just shut it off. It's over. So for the 4 listeners that are still listening after this, where can people find you, man? Do you have a blog? What are your handles? How can they follow your health? You have a lot of insights. I think you're going to be a big force in this health space because I can see how you can help. I try to talk to moms and people with like autoimmune disease. And you have, I really neglected the type of people that are going to benefit from your message, teens and kids that want to get healthier and that people don't really pay attention to. So, I love your message. How can people follow you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Guillermo, for the opportunity, but also, your advice and just how friendly you are. I really appreciate it. And you're doing fantastic work. So thank you. But in terms of where people can find me, so currently I've released the Carnivore Shredding Program on my website, www.thecarnivoreshreddingprogram.com. So they can check that out there. And I will have some new programs coming out soon. And those will be specifically targeted towards if you're trying to do a body transformation. And if you really want to drop fat, build muscle, but in a way that's not forcing your body through caloric restriction, exercising too hard, and eating the wrong food. When you're eating the right foods, people, I'm telling you, it's not as hard. There is a more efficient and effective way to do this. And that's what I've hopefully tried to encapsulate in the Carnivore Shredding Program. So I highly recommend check that out. I'm also on Instagram. I post a lot of content there if you're interested in shirtless selfies and all that sort of stuff. So that's at William Shewfelt, William Shewfelt. And then I also have a YouTube, so that's youtube.com/Will Shewfelt.
Awesome, dude. Can you say that website again? Because I think it cut off on my end.
That's thecarnivoreshreddingprogram.com. Shredding, not shedding. Thecarnivoreshreddingprogram.com.
Awesome. And I'll have links to all of those on the podcast notes. Dude, super awesome conversation. I can't wait to see you at Paleo Effect because you're going. And then we're gonna geek out, and then and hopefully no evil mutant from a different planet shows up, and then you have to call your buddies. But I do have to ask you this question: who would win in a battle, without having to call, external help, the 5 Power Rangers or Captain Planet team?
Oh man, I haven't been paid to say this, but the 5 Power Rangers, absolutely.
Yeah, because the Heart Kid is useless. What did he ever bring? A monkey? No, the Power Rangers have karate moves.
Exactly. There we go.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for being here, dude. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, man.